This afternoon we're going to move on to the subject of the truth about embryo grading. This is something that's been ingrained in the ART culture now, even as we have moved from culturing embryos longer and longer. And of course, some individuals have put a lot of weight on the idea that by the morphological characteristics of the embryo, we would be able to begin to predict which embryos upon transfer might establish a pregnancy. So I'll turn it over to my colleagues here. What do you think about embryo grading?
Well, I think it's a guide. I think if you have a set of embryos and some of them look beautiful, maybe they're more favorable and we'll go for those first. But, you know, I've had countless numbers of patients who have had transfers of what we would have graded as, you know, not so beautiful embryos who end up with beautiful babies. So there's no relationship.
And vice versa.
Yeah.
Beautiful embryos that ended up without babies, yeah.
But so patients are always worried, gee, if I transfer this embryo that's got a low grade, is it going to end up to have, you know, developmental problems or something like that? I said, no. All this is giving us is a sense of possibly the potential of it implanting and becoming a pregnancy. But the baby is a whole nother thing.
Nature's very smart. It's usually working all or nothing. Either the baby's healthy or not. Or there is no baby.
But that's a selection that's happening early on. Okay?
Very early on.
You know, and there are, you know, as we talk more and more about corrective measures, whether it has anything to do with the chromosomal constitution or how the embryo looks. Fragmentation, I remember, you know, became one of the first very negative signs that was applied to grading in the very, very early stages of the game.
And
they're reversible in many cases.
And now with all the closed incubation systems, with audiovisual monitoring, they talk to the embryo. No, this was a joke.
I talk to the embryo.
So it has gotten even more strange in many ways, because you cannot open a medical journal now without people publishing new observations that have a predictive value for embryos, yet none of these systems have ever been able to show that they improve IVF cycle outcomes. You know, so how much of a difference can they really make? Embryo.
I think to some degree, a very robust embryo is probably more likely to succeed. The other thing that it comes into is in the freezing and cryopreservation. In general, embryos that are not so robust don't do so well with freezing. But sometimes they become babies.
And isn't it true that you know, one of the laboratory indicators when you're thawing an embryo out after cryopreservation is that it must re-expand. But there are many reports of embryos that get transferred that never did re-expand. Okay,
and they become babies.
Okay.
This is funny that you're mentioning it, because we had a recent inspection where the inspector actually criticized us for us not putting enough attention on the expansion of the embryo. But again, in our patient population, the frequency in which we see things is so different from most other IVF clinics that we, over the years, had to develop our own criteria in judging which embryos are we willing to transfer and which embryos not. But embryo morphology is still the best embryo selection. None of the newer methods of embryo selection have proven to do anything on top of basic embryo morphology. So it is very important that your embryologists understand what's a better and what's a worse embryo, but it is essential to understand that this is not black and white. It is not that an embryo either can get you a pregnancy or cannot get you a pregnancy. It's a gradual process, and some lousy looking embryos give you perfect pregnancies and some great looking embryos do not. Obviously, the great looking embryos will give you more.
You know, my patients ask me, you know, how do they do the embryo grading? How does that work? I said, well, it's the same as if you go into the flower store, you want to buy some roses. The ones that look strong and symmetrical and everything, those are going to last longer when you take them home. And the same thing with the embryos. We look at symmetry, we look at color, we look at the consistency, even as they go to blast. Do they look robust? That you're looking at a natural biological thing, and you're just using the same
Like you
things
say,
we use.
it's a guide, right?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, and you know, superimposed on this, as you were just mentioning, Norbert, we now have these time-lapse systems where, you know, you do get a chronological representation of when every cell in the embryo starts to divide. And people have made a big deal out of, well, the timing of those events should also give us predicted value. That also has not
worked.
It has not worked. Okay? So
Nature works in curious ways and in varying ways. So
I think she's good at keeping her secrets from us.
maybe.
The other thing, we talk about the symmetry of the embryo, especially the early cleavage stage embryos, where they talk about if the blastomeres are all the same size, that's a better grade than if they're somewhat different.
Right.
But we know from the time lapse that they're dividing at different times.
Yes.
So there's going to be some time when they're all going to be different. So
Yep.
the difference between C and a B grade might just be an hour.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.